Spaghetti string rackets. Spaghetti string rackets were the string jobs that forced tennis to define what a legal racket even is. Instead of one woven bed on a single plane, these frames stacked 2 layers of non-interlaced strings with tubing and tie-offs that let the mains slide and snap back. The effect of this spaghetti string style was extreme. It helped rackets create unnatural spin and erratic bounce that conventional rackets couldn't reproduce. Now, while players have been complaining about these spaghetti rackets, the ruling body didn't react, at least not immediately. But in the late summer of 1977, qualifiers and journeymen started using it more and more, turning heads with the setup. The most famous showcase came a few weeks later, Aix-en-Provence, October 2nd of the same year. Ilie Nastase brought a spaghetti-strung racket into the final against Guillermo Vilas. The ball flight and bounce were so abnormal that Vilas retired in protest after 2 sets, and the debate over competitive integrity went from murmurs to sirens. Administrators moved fast. First came a temporary ban that autumn while the sport drafted a precise definition of what counts as a racket. Then, on July 13, 1978, tennis locked in the rule that still governs play today. The hitting surface must be one single, flat plane of crossed strings that are interlaced or bonded with a generally uniform pattern, and the racket must play the same on both faces. In plain English, no stacked string beds, no designs that deliberately create unpredictable ball behavior. What changed after the ruling wasn't just the disappearance of a gimmick. By closing the spaghetti loophole, tennis standardized the foundation of modern string beds. Spin stayed in the game, generated by legal patterns, technique, and string materials. But the outlier engineering that turned rallies into a physics glitch was removed. Overlength and oversized rackets. The bigger the head, the bigger the sweet spot, the bigger the power. The late 70s and 80s equipment boom made that equation irresistible. Frames stretched longer, heads ballooned wider, and the easy power trend started to blur the line between skill and sheer leverage. That's where the rulebook drew a hard box around the racket's size. ITF came to a conclusion on what legal rackets should look like. And it's simple. A maximum overall length of 73.7 centimeters, a maximum overall width of 31.7 centimeters, and a hitting surface cap of 39.4 centimeters by 29.2 centimeters. Anything beyond that isn't innovative. It's flat out illegal. Here's the key distinction you probably don't know. Oversize isn't banned. Only beyond limit oversize is. Manufacturers can and do build larger head rackets inside those numbers. That's why you still see frames marketed as OS or extended today. They simply live inside the fixed dimensions. The limits were put in place to prevent rocket launcher physics from replacing tennis fundamentals, which are contact precision, footwork, and timing. The practical impact was immediate. Manufacturers redesigned lines to conform. Players who tasted ultra-long or ultra-wide experiments had to recalibrate. Recreational tennis lost the temptation to solve every problem with a bigger paddle. The pro game maintained a consistent look and feel across decades. And, crucially, the hitting surface limit shut down ideas that would have turned rackets into near-rectangular trampolines, with sweet spots so forgiving that timing errors stopped mattering. These caps still govern today. They protect the rally from turning into a gear contest, keep technique at the center of the sport, and ensure that a tennis racket is recognizably a tennis racket in any era. If you've ever wondered why frames don't creep longer every few years, it's because the rulebook froze the growth curve on purpose. Illegal attachments and dampener placement. Now, if racket size is boxed in, what you bolt on is policed even harder. The rule of thumb is simple. A legal racket is just the frame and a single, flat string bed. Anything you attach that changes how it plays crosses the line. What's not allowed? Powered gimmicks, internal springs, moving parts, protruding weights, or any add-on that alters shape, balance, or swing characteristics in a way that turns equipment into assistance. Both faces must play the same. No secret hot side. What is allowed? Small, sensible items that protect the frame from wear or reduce vibration. Something like bumper/grommet protection and vibration dampeners. But even at that, placement still matters. Dampeners must sit outside the pattern of crossed strings, typically just below the last cross, near the throat, or along the outer edge. If you thread one inside the hitting area, that racket becomes illegal the moment you step on court. Multiple dampeners are fine, as long as they're all outside the string pattern and reasonable in size. Now, if you're wondering how it's enforced, it's pretty straightforward. If an opponent, umpire, or stringer spots an attachment that looks suspect, oversized, protruding, or clearly performance-altering, the chair can require you to remove it or change rackets immediately. Non-compliance risks code violations or loss of points. The point is consistency. Your timing, swing, and technique should decide the rally, not a hidden device doing work for you. Electronic devices on court. Tennis is built on a simple idea. Once the match starts, it's you and your opponent. Electronic devices blur that line. Phones, smartwatches, earbuds, tablets, anything that can record, analyze, or communicate are treated as outside assistants during play. Here's the clean version of the rule. If a device can send you information, or let someone send you information, it's off limits once the match is underway. That includes a smartwatch that could receive texts, earbuds that could relay instructions, or a phone buzzing in your bag. The sport groups these tools under player analysis technology, and use is only allowed when the event explicitly permits it, and within very tight conditions. What players can't do during a match: check a phone between points, wear connected earbuds, glance at a smartwatch notification, or consult a tablet for live stats. Even when devices are allowed at an event, access is typically restricted to specific moments, like changeovers, and non-communicative use. No live messaging. If the event doesn't allow it, the device stays off and out of play, period. What about medical needs? If a device is required for health monitoring, that's handled as a special permission and needs to be cleared in advance and used in a way that doesn't provide competitive information. The line is the same. Medical monitoring is one thing. Coaching or data delivery is another. How it plays out on court is simple. Umpires watch for visible devices. If a smartwatch is on your wrist or earbuds are in your ears, you'll be told to remove them. Using or consulting a device can draw a code violation, escalate to point penalties, and if someone persists, default is possible. It's enforced to protect the core of the game. Decision-making must come from you, not from a screen or a voice in your ear. Imagine Carlos Alcaraz getting live updates on what he's doing wrong or right from Ferrero in the heat of the match. Doesn't make sense, right? Exactly. Electronic coaching versus off-court coaching. You see, for decades, the coaching rule was simple: no coaching during a match. If advice reached the player mid-contest, spoken, signaled, or piped in through a device, it was illegal. That baseline still matters. What's changed is the controlled lane that now exists for off-court coaching under modern rules. Here's the clean version. Electronic communication is still out. No texts, no earbuds, no smartwatch nudges, no tablet consultations. That's treated as outside assistance. What's newly allowed is brief, non-electronic guidance from a coach in the player's box, only within strict boundaries that preserve the flow and fairness of play. What a coach may do when the event permits off-court coaching is offer short, discreet verbal cues or hand signals, but they have to do it between points or at changeovers, choss, set, breaks, and they've got to keep it quick and non-disruptive. If it delays play or distracts the opponent, it's a problem. Now, what remains illegal? Any coaching during a point remains illegal. Electronic relays of information via messages, audio, and live device prompts remain illegal. Ongoing mini-lectures that stall the match, or anything that becomes gamesmanship, remain illegal. Now the question is, how's the rule enforced fairly? Well, chair umpires warn first when possible, then escalate to code violations, which can cost points, and, if persistent, games. The target isn't to silence coaches completely. It's to prevent coaching from taking over rallies or turning matches into live sideline tutorials. The player is still expected to make decisions on their own once the point starts. Why this matters in practice. Viewers will sometimes hear a quick phrase from the box or see a simple signal. That's not necessarily illegal anymore. But if you see a player checking a device or a coach essentially running a timeout huddle mid-game, expect enforcement. The modern line is straightforward. Short, human, between points is narrowly allowed. Live, electronic, or disruptive is not. Wimbledon's all-white clothing rule. At Wimbledon, almost entirely white isn't a vibe, it's a rule. Shirts, shorts or skirts, socks, caps, headbands, wristbands, shoes, and any visible undergarments must read white on court. Color is limited to a single trim, no wider than about a centimeter. Bold patterns, large color blocks, and tinted soles are out. Shoes are part of the scrutiny too. Uppers, laces, and soles are expected to be white, so the footprint you leave is grass, not neon. Enforcement is practical and immediate. Before matches, you'll see kit checks. During play, the chair or referee can require a change if something slips through. That's why players pack multiple versions of the same outfit at Wimbledon. If a logo is too large or a seam shows the wrong color, the backup comes on. Even small details get attention. A colored headband, an accent stitching that runs wide, or a non-white bra strap showing under a top will trigger a warning and a swap. There has been one recent important adjustment though. Since 2023, Wimbledon permits solid mid to dark colored undershorts for women, not extending below the skirt-top shorts. Everything else about the dress code remains. Outer layers should still appear predominantly white on court, with the same narrow trim and logo size limits as before. Now, if you're one of those tennis fans who have always wondered, why hold the line? The answer is simple: tradition. Uniformity on grass and a clear visual standard have been part of the championships since the 19th century. Whether you agree or not, players enter, knowing the constraint. Outfitters design for it, and officials apply it consistently. Break the code, and you're not debating aesthetics. You're changing. Manufacturer logos and branding limits. Grand Slam tennis isn't a fashion billboard. Every visible logo is counted, measured, and placed down to the square inch. The principle is simple. Players, not ads, should dominate the screen. Here's how it works at the slams. Clothing gets a limited number of manufacturer identifications called brand marks. Each of these marks is confined to tight-sized boxes and specific locations. For shirts and jackets, either one must have a large mark up to 4 square inches, or 2 small marks, each up to 2 square inches. It could be on the front or sleeve, depending on the rulebook's layout. For shorts and skirts, it's typically 1 mark, up to 2 square inches, on the front or side. For headwear and wristbands, it's also 1 mark, up to 2 square inches, on a cap, headband, or wristband. No repeats around the band. For socks and shoes, it's usually 1 visible mark, up to 2 square inches per item. No oversized heel tabs acting as billboards. One-piece dresses are treated like a shirt plus skirt combined, which means the same total mark count and the same size ceilings, just applied to the single garment. Outerwear on court for warm-ups is also counted while worn. If it has logos, those logos must also fit the limits. 2 more boundaries keep things clean. First, no repeating patterns that sneak a logo into an all-over print. Step back 5 meters and it still has to read as a pattern, not a wall of brand marks. Second, commercial advertising, sponsor logos that aren't the manufacturer, is restricted or disallowed on most garments at the slams. If you're wondering about enforcement, well, it happens in real time. If a hat shows a second logo, if a sleeve graphic is a hair too large, or if a dress hides a forbidden placement under a seam, the referee will ask for a change before you hit the next ball. Outfitters design special slam kits around these boxes for a reason. A mid-match swap breaks rhythm and can cost an athlete momentum. Outside the slams, ATP and WTA tournaments apply their own branding rules, which are broadly similar, but not identical. Some events permit a bit more sponsor space, others mirror slam-like constraints. The safe mindset for any player: count your marks, measure your marks, and know the tournament's book. Marking, damaging, footwear. Shoes aren't just apparel in tennis. They're equipment that touches the playing field. Every step, slide, and split step matters. That's why tournaments reserve the right to refuse any outsole that marks, stains, or damages the court. The baseline is simple. If your soles leave visible streaks or chew into the surface, they're out. Referees apply this in real time, and the fix can be as disruptive as it sounds. Change shoes now, or you don't keep playing. Grass makes the logic obvious. At Wimbledon, the turf is living, delicate, and expensively prepared. Outsoles must provide traction without tearing the blade or gouging the soil, so aggressive studs or ribbed heels that bite too hard into the grass won't pass, and anything that visibly marks is a problem. Even sole color matters on pristine surfaces. Tinted compounds that print dark scuffs are treated as damage, not style. If an official spots marks during play, the player is told to swap to appropriate grass court shoes immediately. Clay has its own version of the rule. The surface is groomed for a consistent top layer and predictable slide. Black rubber that streaks, or outsole patterns designed for other surfaces, can stain the clay and alter how the ball bites or how a player stops. That's why you won't see grass studs at Roland Garros. Tournaments expect clay-suitable herringbone or equivalent patterns that track well, release the clay cleanly, and keep the bounce uniform from baseline to baseline. Hard courts might look indestructible, but they show everything. Dark scuffs accumulate, and abrasive heels can burn lines into the acrylic. Events still demand non-marking compounds that don't leave the court looking like a tire test by the second set. The common thread across surfaces is the same: protect the court, keep footing predictable, and prevent one player's gear from changing how the other has to move. You'll see this enforced before the coin toss and during the match. If a player warms up and the outsole is obviously marking, the referee intervenes. No debate, just a shoe change. If the wrong pair reappears later, the sanctions escalate like any equipment violation. Brands know the boundaries, which is why most pros travel with multiple pairs tailored to the week's surface and event policy. Madrid's blue clay. It looked fantastic on TV. Bright blue courts, white lines, yellow balls. Every rally popped. But the 2012 Madrid Open proved that looking great and playing great aren't the same thing. The tournament switched from traditional red clay to a blue-dyed surface, pitched as a visibility upgrade and a fresh identity for a flagship spring event. From day one, players called it too slippery. Movement on clay depends on a predictable slide and stop, but this surface felt like it traded grip for glamour. Footing went from instinctive to tentative. Complaints were immediate and loud. Rafael Nadal, normally a lock on clay, lost to Fernando Verdasco in the third round and said he wouldn't return if the blue court stayed. Novak Djokovic fell later in the week and echoed the same ultimatum. The verdict from the locker room was consistent. It changed how clay tennis is supposed to be played. Results didn't spare the criticism. Roger Federer adjusted best on the men's side and beat Tomasz Berdych in the final, but even he questioned the traction. On the women's side, Serena Williams powered through the draw and defeated Victoria Azarenka in the final, yet the broader complaint didn't fade. This wasn't a fair clay test. The ball skidded differently, the slide didn't behave, and the surface felt inconsistent from zone to zone. After the tournament, the tours took stock. The ATP had approved Madrid's switch as a one-year trial, subject to player feedback and playability standards. That feedback was unequivocal. In June 2012, the ATP ruled that blue clay would not be permitted the following season. Madrid reverted to traditional red clay, and the experiment ended there. The message was simple: surfaces can evolve, but not at the cost of predictable movement and competitive integrity. So, which rule in tennis stood out the most to you? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.